Good evening. I call to order this meeting of the Gladstone City Council, a work session on Tuesday, March 25th, 2025. It's 5:30 p.m. Tammy, will you call the roll, please?
Councillor Huckabee. Councillor Mitchell.
Present.
Councillor Blau.
Present.
Councillor Labonte.
Present.
Councillor Roberts.
Present.
Councillor Garlington.
Present.
Mayor Milch.
Present. Please stand for the flag salute. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The City of Gladstone is abiding by guidelines set forth in House Bill 2560, which requires the governing body of the public body, to the extent reasonably possible, to make all meetings accessible remotely through technological means and provide opportunity for members of the general public to remotely submit oral and written testimony during meetings to the extent in-person oral and written testimony is allowed. Therefore, this meeting is open to the public both in person and virtually using the Zoom platform. And the public is welcome to attend the work session in person or online. However, no public comment will be allowed because this is a work session. We just have one item on our agenda tonight. That's a presentation from our state representative and former Gladstone City Council member, Anessa Hartman. And she is coming to us via Zoom from, are you in Salem?
I sure am.
Welcome. We look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you all. Let me get my screen situated there. Can everybody see that all right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. First, I just want to apologize that I did not know I was the only thing standing in the way of you all enjoying one of our first beautiful, warm afternoons. So I do apologize. So I will breeze through these and answer any questions while I am sharing my screen. I just want to note that I won't be able to see anyone's hands or anything, so just yell at me. So thank you so much for taking the time. We just wanted to provide a little bit of a mid-session update. This is the agenda that we'll go through. So I'll jump right into our legislative summary. The key issues that the building has been talking about or is focusing on really stems from 4 different areas: transportation, housing production, reducing the cost of living, and education funding. And so, and these are, I would say, the overall big top topic items. That doesn't mean that each of us individually don't have our own personal big topic items that we also keep advocating for. Just for some fun, by the way of numbers, this session, there were 3,384 bills introduced. And as of Friday, March 21st, last Friday, 2,045 of those are no longer active, or as we call, are dead, which is quite a bit. And the first chamber deadline is Wednesday, April 9th, which means that's the second round of when the death by cuts comes, that if your bill has not been worked or moved out of committee and then also moved out of the chamber, that means it is another round of officially dead. We have our revenue forecast that is coming Wednesday, May 14th. I think a lot of folks will be anticipating and are anxious to see that. And then after that, we will have our second chamber deadline, which is Friday, May 23rd. And our constitutional sine die this year is Sunday, June 29th. We will not sine die or end session more than, I believe, 3 weeks before that. So please stay tuned for updates on that and look out for that revenue forecast on Wednesday, May 14th. Excuse me. Hold on one second. I had wanted to share a little bit. We have been sharing this with our cities and local municipalities. We are all getting the question around the why. Why is there a little bit of fear? Why is there unknown? And this really is because of, this is the why. Congress passed their budget with $4.5 trillion in proposed tax cuts. And for the areas that I really focus in are around child welfare, human services. That is really, and early education is really, that budget is really landing in the energy and commerce and the education and workforce area. And so those are the proposed cuts as of right now. But because there's such a wide range of what is within those different committees, we do not know yet where those cuts are going to come from. And that's really what we're waiting for. The other area that I serve in is agriculture and natural resources. Again, a $230 billion cut in from the agriculture sphere, and then another 1 billion from what they deem as natural resources, or however they split up their committee. But in total, 231 billion in the sort of natural resource agriculture area that we just don't know what exactly is being cut. We have had agencies report to us that certain programs they've been alerted are no longer going to happen, which means we will have to either close those programs or figure out if we are able to backfill with state dollars. So this is sort of the why. There's a lot of unknowns. We are not aware of when we will understand these proposed cuts, tax cuts, and how they might impact us. But each and every agency is following that closely and figuring out where might those cuts come from and how will the state backfill and support those programs that we have established.
So Rep. Hartman, a question for you.
Yep.
So right now, based on just a budget resolution, these are kind of funding goals. They're not broken down by department or by program or anything like that. And it says it's over a 10-year period. And this is for the entire country. It's not just for the state of Oregon. So I can see why there's uncertainty then, because you don't know what specific programs are going to be targeted to meet these goals, if we'll call them that.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know how much per year, how quickly the cuts will be put into effect. And then you don't know how to translate that into what happens in the state of Oregon. But it's a challenging time to be serving in the legislature. I'll say that.
Yes, no, that is a really good summary. I think where my focus really has been around our Head Start, our early Head Start, our SNAP benefits, and our Child Care and Development Fund. Those are areas where I oversee as the chair of Early Childhood and Human Services on the House side. These are programs that were created by the federal government that we bought into, and we are supporting, and we are receiving match dollars. And there are agencies and cities and counties that have planned on certain developments and certain projects based off on the promise of these dollars, and we just do not know where those cuts are going to come from right now. Excuse me. Next, I wanted to provide a little bit of a transportation plan update. This is really wordy, and it is because it comes from a one-pager, but it really gives us a lot of information, and our office will send the actual one-pager over to you all so you have it. This really talks about what the overview of the Transportation Committee will be focusing on, where our funding problem lies, and really what is at risk and what services are at risk. This next slide talks about the 3 work groups that have been actively meeting and are continuing to meet. The very top part is the legislative priorities of the Transportation Committee and of the Transportation Package, really around securing and stabilizing our funding for both maintenance and preservation, enhance our multimodal transit, and then also ensure funding for commitments that were made in the previous transportation package from 2017. Ironically, the House bill is called 2017. But for us, that might ring a bell because in that package, that is where the Abernathy Bridge seismic updates were promised, as well as the widening of the I-205. And so those are the discussions that are happening around making sure we're living up to those priority commitments. But I want to call your attention to the 3 different work groups and the report outs that we are going to receive. And that work group 1 is probably of the most interest. And that's where the secure and stable funding research and work has been happening. They are identifying and researching thankfully putting everything out on the table about what it looks like to increase the fuel tax and by how much, what it looks like to implement increasing vehicle registration fees or title fees, as well as the increasing plate manufacturing fee. And those are sort of they've identified those as the short-term revenue streams. The longer-term ones is where we tend to get excited in Clackamas County. And I want to make sure you notice that in that bullet point, there is nothing about congestion pricing or tolling. It has been promised that this session, we are not considering congestion pricing or tolling at this time. Those are the three funding streams, revenue streams that they will be exploring and what that looks like. Increased EV charging fees, vehicle gross usage charge, or otherwise vehicle miles traveled, or VMT, and indexing the fuel tax to inflation. And those are all being proposed. Those are not right now, those are not this is what we're going to do. They are doing the work to research and identify what this looks like. And again, like a lot of us have been saying, give us all the options and let's see what works for us. So more to come on that. We just received this information at the end of last week. I believe that another document that we have that we will share is meeting times. The Joint Transportation Committee also gave us a really detailed, and I really appreciate this, about when they're meeting, what the topics are going to be about. And so we'll be sure to continue to update you on those things in the way of transportation. We're lucky now that Senator Meek is both on the policy group as well as the Ways and Means subgroup. And so we've got at least one Clackamas County voice active during these conversations. So are there any questions around the transportation piece?
Any questions from counselors? I believe Counselor Labonte has a question.
Hi, Rep. Hartman. Thanks for being here. And you might not be able to answer this, but the increase to the transit tax, any idea of how much of an increase they're looking at, or too early in the game?
I think it's too early in the game. Again, I think they've heard loud and clear from a lot of us that we need to see all types of options. I think, even to the point of, okay, if we want to keep increasing that tax low, this is what it's going to look like if we do like vehicle miles traveled, or so they're going to try and like balance the three different long-term revenue streams, is my understanding.
Thank you.
Okay, so as I said, I am newly appointed as the chair for the House Early Childhood and Human Services Committee. A lot of our work, it's a lot of work for one committee. On the Senate side, they have separated the two. So on the Senate side, you would see an Early Childhood and Healthcare Committee, and then there's a Senate Human Services Committee. So they have separated that work on that side. The hope is in the future that maybe we can explore that on the House side. But as of right now, those two are very much combined, and they do go hand in hand quite often. But on the early childhood space, we really have been talking about DELC, which is the Department of Early Learning Care, and addressing what's called the ERDC, or the Employment Related Daycare Waitlist. It is a program that the state had built. Basically, it's a subsidized program for low, moderate income to qualify for like subsidy vouchers. Right now, there is a giant wait list because we just don't have enough providers. And so we have been really studying on how we're going to prove those connections between parents, caregivers, those who need childcare, and the childcare providers. And then sort of the nerd side of me, because it has to do with zoning, and I know some of you love land use and zoning on the council. We have also been working with DLCD around creating recommendations around how to cite childcare and how to expedite that process, and also how to eliminate barriers for those childcare facilities. So because funding is going to be very limited this session, I think in the future sessions to come, we will want to explore what it looks like to have somewhat of a revolving fund, similar to the SDC revolving loan fund, which we'll get into in a second, around how to help cities and smaller cities help with childcare builds within their zoning, within their different zones. On the complete other side of the committee, is really focusing around our quality of child welfare and the foster care system or the children in care system. And so that can go from foster care youth, from adjudicated youth, from those in Proctor foster care homes, so all different types of child and caring agencies. As it's no secret that ODHS has been in the news and not the most positive of lights, and that has really been a laser focus for myself around how are we going to improve our child welfare system, and give families the tools that they need to stay together. And so that has been a big topic the past 2 weeks, and we continue to have some of that work. We'll move on as we do chamber switch. So we just wanted to share a little bit about some of our bills, as well as some that we are supporting. Actually, yeah, some that we are supporting. As some of you know, our office does quite a bit of survivor or victims of crime or survivors of abuse policy work. We have had public hearings. We've had a public hearing on the first bullet point, the closing the loopholes in strangulation and banning AI porn. And tomorrow we will have a public hearing, which I am very excited about eliminating the statutes of limitations on civil sexual abuse claims and child abuse claims. So we are really excited to see that one survive. A lot of our other ones did not survive the Friday deadline, but we are excited about these three at the very least to have been heard in committee. In the way of utilities, it's sort of rising up there with our four-letter word of ODOT, that utility companies are continuing to hike up rates and are really affecting our neighbors and our constituents, not just in Gladstone and Oregon City, but just around the state. And so a couple of bills that we are working, and there's actually plenty of others out there, but really the big one was House Bill 3179 around giving the Public Utility Commission the authority to review some of those major rate hikes and demand the cost transparency and set fair rates for our neighbors and have more of an open and transparent process, which I believe that is moving quite along, and conversations are still having. And then the last sort of section is around for our aging population. This is just one of many, but I was shocked to find out that the state does not have a proactive plan on how to support our aging population, and for those who would like to age in grace and provide services. We do not have the services currently to support folks who need that wraparound services and assistance. And so what this bill is planning to do is bring together all different types of agencies, from housing to DHS to higher education, because we want to talk about work plans around increasing the workforce into this pathway. And that is what House Bill 3497 does. Is I don't tend to support task forces, but this is one that we actually need and don't have all the answers for. And so this really came from knowing that in about 10 years, we're going to have more people over the age of 65 than we have ever had in the country, both and in Oregon. So hopefully we can be proactive about how we are going to plan for that, and increase our services and increase those career pathways for folks.
Let me interrupt you here. I think we have a couple of questions from counselors.
Sure thing.
Counselor Blaud.
Hi, this is Counselor Blaug. There has been some discussion about charging high commercial users like data centers a higher rate than they are currently being paid to help pay for lowering the cost on consumers. Has that gone anywhere?
That is a conversation that is happening, and I am drawing a blank. I know you all think that I might remember every single House bill number.
I'm sure you're very busy.
But we just had a conversation about this, and I do believe it is still alive and well, because it is also a priority of a lot of different people. Where that is at, let me get back to you. I'm blanking on the House bill number, but it is in the House side. And yes, that's exactly what it does. It's under Representative Marsh's name. Is exactly what it does. Is hold the larger or what they call industrial size users, so the Intels, the data centers, to their fair share of utilities. It hasn't gone, it won't go to address sort of your mid-level users. I think this is the first of its kind where we will step into this space around how do we have fair rates across the board. House Bill 3546, yes. And it won't address yet sort of maybe so your mid-level like the convention center or hotels. It looks like the work session is scheduled for this Thursday, which means it hopefully will have the votes to move out of committee. So we've already had the public hearing, it looks like, on the 6th of this month. And then this would mean that it's hopefully going to come out of the committee and either not to Ways and Means to the floor for a vote. So exciting.
Great, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Councilor Labonte has a question or a comment.
Hi, and just to go back a little bit on the children with disabilities and DHS, it's my understanding that there are some pretty big gaps between DHS and the Oregon Youth Authority. From your end, are there any conversations about some of those gaps or getting the two organizations online?
Oh, those are conversations that we are having for sure. Yes, so there is a rather large conversation, and if you looked up the bill, it might not make any sense. So I will refrain from addressing it because what has happened is, and this was an unintended impact, is that youth or adjudicated youth have not been included in the statutes. It's a simple bill that's going to just basically add that language into all of the statutes that constitute all the different authorities that DHS oversees in child and caring agencies. But we have a lot of work to do. Like we have a lot of work to do to connect those services. We have the third highest rate of youth in correctional facilities in the country. Coupled with us being now 49th with access to services in mental health, as I'm sure we can all agree, that doesn't sit well with me at all. And so it is, as a new chair, one of the areas of focus that I will be leaning into, definitely during the interim, to see what those fixes look like and how we can make sure we're wrapping around the child and not necessarily siloing all of their experiences. But we thank you for the question because it is a huge topic and we will have a lot of work and conversations to go on that one.
Thank you. And I agree it is a huge and very important topic.
Yeah.
So I had a similar question. You alluded to what we're seeing on the news and reading in the news about Oregon Youth Authority and some sort of weaknesses in the services they're providing. I'll put it that way. So some of these are issues then that can be addressed legislatively. This is not just a department that needs an overhaul, but it's some things that there are some, you're discovering, like you say, the inclusion of adjudicated youth into that. This is some stuff that the legislature can really help with then, from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the end, OIA and ODHS and any of our agencies are under the purview of the executive branch. But that does not mean that oversight and accountability cannot come from the legislature, at least in my opinion, especially when we are the ones who are directly hearing from Oregonians who are experiencing, whether it's the foster care system or our youth corrections facilities or residential facilities. We are often the ones that hear those and receive those reports. And the goal really, as a new chair and as my lens, is looking for the gaps and trying to find a story in those reports about what it is that we're missing. I think that, even in the recent stories that we have seen, it's not a challenge, I would say, but OIA's purview is really lands a lot in the committees that are on judiciary because it sort of the topic of conversation is there. And so my hope really is like, how do we have a crossover conversation where you have those of us who are human services minded, we understand the programs, we understand that there are a lot of factors that go into why a child might be committed, and what are those systemic barriers, or what are those I want to say statutes of limitations because that is what's in my head right now. Social determinants of health. Thank you. Social determinants of health. What tools did we not give that family or that child? And so there are a lot of program oversight that I plan on doing. There's a lot of streamlining of services that I would love to look into. And what the legislature can do is require and pass policy that requires these agencies to take a deep dive into certain areas as we see fit. And so, sorry for the long-winded answer, but there is definitely, I think, it is my responsibility to make sure that I am providing that oversight and combing through things with a fine-tooth comb.
No, I appreciate you're seeing that as part of your role as an elected representative of the people, and I hope you'll come up with some good creative solutions to addressing these issues. Thank you. You can, let's see if there's anybody. You can move on to the next section.
Thank you for those questions because it is a huge passion project of mine. So just a quick touch on, as some of you know, I no longer serve on Housing and Homelessness Committee. I now serve on a Ways and Means Committee instead of this Housing Committee. But I did want to highlight 3 bills, one of which is mine, but 2 of which we had touched on in the long session 2 years ago. The SDC referral program or deferral program was a bill that Representative Gamba and a couple of others, those of us who have been locally elected officials, saw as an opportunity. And that bill died last time, but it has gotten to a really great place. I will direct you to the House Bill number 2968 for those that want to really read the bill and understand. The staff summary is really great, and it goes into what this program will do. But if those of you that remember, it really is establishing a program within OHCS to recover any unpaid SDCs from developers who had paid, who have failed to pay that agreed upon deferral period. A lot of folks within Clackamas County had worked on this with Representative Gamba, and there's a lot more in this bill in 2968 than these 4 lines can ever give to it. So I would absolutely recommend going to look at that staff summary. And if you need help finding where that is, let us know. I will share the squatter eviction fix. This is my bill, my office's bill. I think a lot of you all remembered a couple of years back when we had the house off of East Fairfield hang Nazi flags from their windows, and unfortunately Chief Schmerber and the city were unable to remove those residents due to them claiming squatters' rights. And so as I learned about this issue, I learned from the city, even with suggestions of tools. The house had been bought by a new landlord. He had to go through a very long process, which exposed a loophole in our squatter eviction laws. And I will tell you right now, I had no idea how big of a deal this particular fix, what feels like just a loophole fix to us. We'd worked on this for about an hour, wanting to be mindful that not every squatter experience is the same. It is a spectrum of issues. We also, since I shared the originating story and why I wanted to make sure that folks know that, for lack of a better phrase, not all squatters are bad. We had another constituent come forward who is an elderly disabled woman who was unfortunately tricked out of her title. And that new property owner wanted to evict her, and Unfortunately, she did not understand, and I will say she is actively still in dispute with that new landlord, and she is I believe on disability, and so this is a case where she was tricked and lied to, where we want to make sure that she has some protections to get her into a new home, or to fight for the fact that her home was tricked out of her title. So that's sort of the spectrum, but we have heard from hundreds of stories around more of the negative experiences people have had. And did it pass out of committee? Yeah, and I am happy to report that it passed out of committee. I believe yesterday, but the days here are running like weeks. So it should come to the House floor for a vote. It passed unanimously. It's a bipartisan and bicameral bill, which I'm really, really excited for. And I will end with, on that particular note, that why I mentioned that I didn't understand, or I didn't know stepping into this space how big of a deal this was, is we've had two sort of warring sides of landlords and property owners versus tenants' rights, and in the testimony during the public hearing, they would say, hey, anytime you can get the two of us to agree on anything, it's very hard and challenging, apparently. So we're really excited that we got to a place where everyone feels happy. So looking forward to that floor vote, and that is a bill that began from our own constituent. So excited to have worked on that and fix that. And I'll just say, so I don't have to read more, but the last bullet point is continuing the LIFT program. And basically what that is the local innovation and fast track homeownership program. And it creates affordable homeownership opportunities for low and moderate income families. And we'll direct you to the House Bill 3090 to have more information on that. So any questions on housing?
I don't see any.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I just one thing you talked about SDCs. For people watching online who aren't familiar with the term, system development charges. These are fees that developers or homeowners pay when they're doing something new with the property that will cause new growth, new demand on the system, and sometimes it can be a burden to pay that all at once, and so that's why you have to have sometimes deferrals, and you're working on a process to make that fair and reasonable. So we appreciate that.
Yes. Thank you for my acronym fixed. I won't read these word for word, but these are some of the bills that we have been supporting around water, around safe drinking water, around the transparency of reporting, particularly well water quality for both tenants and property buyers. The Preserving Agricultural Land, the Oregon Agricultural Heritage Program, which is a tool that has been around for a little while, really provides those tools to new and aspiring farmers, whether that is the next generation or a new farmer, to purchase those working lands. But that has moved out and will sit in Ways and Means until the end. And so these are just some of the water-related bills that we're working on. Representative Helm and Owens, who are both co-chairs of the House Agriculture, Land Use, Water, and Natural Resources Committee, are again working on a rather large water package to really hone in on how what does the future of water look like in Oregon, and again trying to be proactive about how we use that. These just wanted to share some of our funding priorities. These are our main 4 funding priorities, specifically for Gladstone. As I'm sure you all have heard, we're going to seek $4.16 million for the Clackamas County Children's Commission to create the Head Start facility in the old Y building off of Webster. So really hoping that is our number one funding request this year. The other ones is really backfilling our victim services, or Victims of Crime Act, which is VOCA funds. There was a 42% cut that we already know of federal funds to this program. And for us specifically in Clackamas County, and for us in House District 40, we have the pleasure of having most of the services housed within Oregon City. That can be our CACs or our children advocacy centers. It can also be some of our CASA programs, which are our child court-appointed advocates. And then we have a safe place, as some of you are familiar, that is one of our domestic violence and sexual assault shelters, and which houses many different programs for that. So those are in relation to Gladstone, the funding priorities that we're looking at. And then these other two are related to water, of course, in and around and above Oregon City. Oh, and that's it. That's all I got for you. And happy to take questions. Let me just...
Well, one request from you. We didn't get a printed packet tonight as we do for some of our meetings, but if it's possible for you to forward this slideshow to us so we can have it in printed form in our boxes here, it'll help us in referring back to some of these individual bill numbers and to follow your progress on them. Let me see if there are any other questions. Councilor Garlington has a question.
I was wondering, thank you for being here. I was wondering if you had heard any more about the ODOT. Oh boy, did I just lose the word in my head. To see where ODOT was with this amount of money that they say they've lost.
The kind of the audit.
The audit, that's the
Yeah.
word. And I'm a city councilor, and wow. So have you heard any more about auditing ODOT?
It is the sunshine calling your name. City.
It might be.
Stop it. So to my knowledge, there is an internal, I don't know if it's I want to say it's a third party audit, but of systems. It's very specific around, I think the target is really around, do we have the professional capacity and the knowledge to make ODOT work? I know that there are other layers, and I can find some of the language and send that when we send some of the other things around what this audit is going to focus in on. I think where I am hesitant to say that it does focus on the revenue piece is because I'm not quite sure. And because I feel like there's a part of me that was disappointed that the audit wasn't like a full broad range of an audit. And I need to go back and look and see exactly what that is entailing. And then we'll send that over to you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Part of my recollection is that because there was so much focus on possibility of tolling and the fact that some of the projects in Clackamas County did not get completed by ODOT during the 7 or 8 years since they were approved, that led to calls, particularly from, as I recall, Clackamas County legislators wanting some of this oversight. And it was that announcement of $1 billion, error sort of in their budget that kind of got some other folks involved as well. So I remember that our Senator Meek and you were asking for that as you did the road tour with the Joint Transportation Committee. And well, we'll keep following that story.
Yes, I will state as in here, I'm gonna rotate my camera around really quick so you can say hi to the staff. But there's my Chief of Staff, Daniel, and legislative aide this year is Kavi, who does a lot of the coordination on these events as well as constituent services and casework. But both of them were flagging. We did introduce bills to provide that comprehensive audit, but as I'm looking at where they're at, one of them is not alive anymore. Oh, and transportation. Okay, sorry. Oh, 2496 is not the right one. 1117. Let me make sure. Yes. 1117 is the Senate bill that Senator Meek and I reintroduced around directing the Division of Audits to perform that onto ODOT. So that's still sitting in the committee, whether that happens or not. We all know how that goes.
Thank you for that clarification. Councilor Labonte.
Hi, and I guess one more. Can you please maybe speak to us a little bit about schools and PERS and what's happening there with you guys?
I am not going to lie. I have told many people this. The PERS discussion is really not in my wheelhouse. It is something that I rely heavily on Superintendent Jeremiah Patterson, who has been a phenomenal resource. I will just give him some props right now. Has really been leading this charge on how we are going to fix this problem and this issue. We are already feeling, as a parent to two that are in the Gladstone School District, we are already feeling what the future looks like if we cannot figure out this issue with layoffs are happening already, and it is a heartbreaking thing to feel because, as you know, we're a small community. When these teachers who are our neighbors no longer get to return, that is really hard for a lot of us. So he has really been leading the charge. He does have what I believe is a fix that Representative Neron, who is the chair of K through 12 Education Committee, are working on what are these impacts or unintended impacts of these per site accounts on our smaller school districts and just across the board, and how are we going to address how to fix that. And I think that those conversations are beginning to happen in that committee, but it has been a topic sort of in that whole broad picture of how we are going to fund public education. I know that is another big topic of both the executive branch and that committee as well, is looking at the formula that we have been using for years. And I will flag it as many people do. In the end, like, we are going to, at some point down it, within the next 10 years, I would imagine, have to have a really robust conversation about Measure 5 and 50 and how that has impacted both our schools and our communities like Gladstone. So I am happy to check in with the chair of that committee and see like what that roadmap looks like and where those discussions are, and get you all some talking points and some updates on where that's at.
So speaking to community members with children in the school system, there'll be, so the likelihood of real relief, let's say this upcoming school year, in your opinion, is flip a coin, unlikely?
I'll be quite honest. I don't want to give any sort of inclination because it is a committee that I am not involved in, and that is sort of like the process right now that the legislature really leans into is those of us on our specific committees, especially those of us that are chairs of committees. It is up to us to really vet these policies and be really laser focused on what is coming through. And then we are to lean on, as I lean on other chairs in these other committees to have the trust that they have vetted that. And so it is not an area that I am currently following, but obviously know that it is of importance. And so I don't want to either give any hope or give any negativity of an opinion because I just don't know. And these conversations are continuing. I think what is happening right now, the topic of conversation right now is around SPED funding, whether we lift the cap or what does that look like. That is what has been happening, I know, for the past couple of weeks. And when we talk about that formula and talk about the PERS piece, I believe that whether you want to say it's saving the best for last or not, that is to come. And I will say, though, as if that is an area of expertise for anybody listening or for anyone on the council that wants to provide information and resources to the office, that is how I also make informed decisions, is making sure that I'm hearing from community as well.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Down there first.
All right, Councillor Blaug.
Hi, yeah, this is Councillor Blaug. There is some uncertainty around funding for IEP and students with other developmental delays, or do we have plan for how we backfill that?
That is in that gray area of the big unknown. I will say, when it comes to schools, like I said, like that is the topic when it comes to school settings right now and how we fully fund that piece. But when it comes to the IDD community and other services that the state offers, that is a huge gray area.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you referenced earlier the way school districts are funded from the state is a certain amount per pupil, but students who fall into that need for special education get double the amount per pupil, but there's a cap on how much a district can get. And currently that cap is 11%. And in many districts, this is as much as 16, 18, 20% of the students who fall into that category. So those additional needs for services are not provided because of the cap. And so that's part of what our legislators are looking at. And that's why uncertainty. And I think there was a Senate bill that was supposed to help be a fix for that issue of PERS unfunded liability for school districts or other entities as well. We can find out what that number is, and again, you can follow along through some of the legislative websites to see the progress on that bill and how it may, how quickly or to what degree it may affect the district in which you live.
Yeah. I will say
Counselor-
really quick to add on to Councillor Blaug's comment about the people with disabilities piece. I think I had to quickly look up the number, but I think like why there's a big gray area is that 59% of our aging and people with disabilities programs are funded by federal funds. And so that would be impossible for us to backfill. And that is the real scary part right now, just speaking truthfully. We have about 35% of our state funds go to these programs, but 59%, that covers, Medicaid, it covers brain injury services, disability determination, adult protective services. It covers a lot. And that is what is so scary right now, is that it will be physically impossible for us to backfill 59%, and this is just one program. This is quite a bit of our programs. And so more to come. I have heard the joke around the building that there's more than likely we will have many special sessions this year due to, as these numbers sort of solidify and Congress passes where these budget cuts are going to go, we will have to come back in session and have that conversation about how we fill that.
Councillor Garland, did you have another comment?
Yeah, I just have a really quick comment to make that maybe you could fill in my brain a little bit. So many years ago, the Oregon people decided to vote for the Oregon lottery. The lottery originally started for economic development. It was not for schools. That's misinformation. At some point, they moved some of that money towards schools, a large portion of it, and then some of it also went to outdoor school and all sorts of things like that. And there was a gentleman in Lake Oswego who was looking at putting a House bill through that would take some of those lottery dollars and do something else with it. I won't get into what it was, but lottery dollars are all based on a piece of pie, not a certain amount of money. And I have a hard time understanding when our schools are so underfunded, why would anyone in our state allow more of that piece of why would we allow another piece of pie to be taken out of those lottery funds when the school districts rely on a percentage? So I guess my ask of you is tell them to keep their paws off of that. Find a different way, because those lottery funds need to be left alone where they're at. Unless they're going to downsize something else, but not to downsize our schools funding, because that is a piece of pie that we definitely need.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you said. I don't have any other ways of filling. I don't think that there were gaps in there. We can find out. There was a change, and I want to say it was sometime in 2011 is when whether I can't remember the program's name, but that is a part of the discussion, right? Like how specifically the lottery dollars are being expended. And I think for that, it is really important to our rural school districts when a lot of reliance is on the timber tax or timber sales, and of these sort of lottery dollars as well, and being mindful that not every school receives funds in the same way. And I think that is my understanding of what the education committee and those that are in those spaces are looking at is how do we restructure the funding model. And if it is increased money, that is a part of the conversation. Like, what are we going to take away, and do we want to take away, right? And if not, then what are potential services that we might see district by district? Because that might, what happens in Gladstone School District is different than, maybe what happens even just south of us to Oregon City or even Canby. And so I haven't heard too much in the way of touching the lottery funds piece, but I'm sure it is in discussions around that. But yeah, not
Thank
fun
you.
times right now.
Thank you. Well, it's a thrill for us to have one of our own representing us in the legislature. And as I commented at your town hall last week, I appreciate your the effort that you and your staff put into being knowledgeable about a variety of topics, even those that go beyond your area, and you're very honest and frank. Saying if I don't know, you'll guide us in the right direction. But we're pleased with how much you do know and how much you care and how much you do for the people of this community, and you're focused really on the needs statewide. Those of us who live in the urban areas don't understand sometimes the needs of the rural communities and the sources of funding that they have relied on in the past that are no longer there, and how that impacts our whole state. So you all up there in Salem, or down there in Salem, however you look at the map, have a real challenge before you, and we're grateful for the service that you provide to your own constituents and to the people of this state. So I think that's all we have for tonight. We're grateful for you. Again, if you could send us a copy of that presentation, that'll be good reference for us on the important topics that you've lifted up for us. And thank you, Representative Hartman,
Yes.
and your staff.
Good to see you all. Yes, we'll see you soon. Please reach out anytime if there are any questions.
Thank you. Well, I believe that's all we have for tonight. Your agenda, your printed agenda has the dates of our next upcoming meetings. We have council meeting on April 8th, a budget committee meeting on April 21st, and another work session on April 22nd. So we will see you and the community at those meetings. Would someone like to make a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Moved by Councilor Levante, seconded by Councilor Roberts. Tammy, will you call the roll, please?
Counselor Garlington,
Yes.
Counselor Roberts,
Yes.
Counselor Levante.
Yes.
Counselor Blau,
Yes.
Counselor Mitchell,
Yes.
Mayor Milch.
Yes, we are adjourned at 6:21 p.m.